Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the Adobe XD Daily Creative Challenge. My name's Howard Pinsky, Senior XD Evangelist here at Adobe, and I hope you're all doing well on this Friday afternoon. If you are tuning in live, let me know in the chat who you are and where you're tuning in from. We've got Julia and Gadir and Akin and Rodwin and Cornell and Kara and Jan Eric, Munir and Theodore, Michelle and Melissa and Lisa and Pearl. A lot of different people in here, which is great. Familiar faces, new faces, and as Christina says, another day, another challenge. So, what do we have going on for today? Well, let me hop over to my screen. We are just going to dive into things. Thank you, Richard. I appreciate that. I couldn't find my other one, so I threw these ones on, and I'm rolling with it. We've got Tapan from India, Richard from New York, Copenhagen, Zimbabwe. Who else do we have in here? The DE. Denmark, probably. I think that's what it is. Great to see everyone. Hey, Andrew, welcome. Sorry your last stream got cut off. I think it automatically cuts off at 57.4 or something crazy like that. Apologies. But I think you got the winner of your giveaway squeezed in there. So congratulations, William. Alrighty. We're joining from Hawk's office hours. Thank you, everyone who's sticking around from Andrew's amazing stream. Hopefully we pick up on something in Adobe XD. All right, here's the deal. So, behance.net/challenge/XD. This is where you're going to go to get all the information about the Adobe XD Daily Creative Challenge. If you're participating and you haven't hit that big blue register button at the top yet, definitely press it so you're notified when new challenges are released. And here's the rundown. So every single day, Monday to Friday, except the first Monday of the 2 weeks that we're running these challenges, you're going to receive a theme. And I'll get to the themes in just a second. Number 2, you can join us in our community chat. And if I hop over here to Discord, we've got over 45,000 designers in Discord. That's a lot of people. There are almost 2,000 people online right now. Crazy business. You can get the lowdown on the challenges, you can ask questions, you can share tips and tricks, ask for career advice. More importantly, if you are participating in the challenges, hop into the current challenge channel and you'll be able to share the work that you've been doing. And we have some amazing mentors. Many of them are off today because Adobe does have the day off, but we are still running these challenges. But we have Melody and Tim and Peter and Marissa. I believe Joss is in there and Alexis. We have a lot of amazing moderators who are taking a look at some of your work and giving constructive feedback. Number 3, you can watch me or any of the other hosts that are hosting these challenges live at our respected time. For the XD challenge, it is 2 o'clock Pacific time. And for some of you, especially the ones in India, it's like 1 o'clock in the morning over there. What are you doing awake? But I do appreciate you sticking around and hanging out with me. And then you can share your work. Again, you can share it in Discord or you can share it on Behance using the keyword XD Daily Challenge. And that way, you can head over to behance.net/galleries/challenges. I believe that's the one. Yes, I got it. And we are showcasing daily challenges that have come in from XD, Photoshop, and Illustrator. And Andrew, who was just hosting Office Hours, is hosting an amazing Illustrator Daily Creative Challenge. He was wearing spacesuits the last I checked. It's just bonkers stuff. I can't compete with that. Andrew, if you're here, well done. All right, so what do we have going on today? Well, if I scroll down, here's where we've been so far. We started, it's 2:30 a.m. in India. Oh my gosh. Thank you for sticking up at 2:30 in the morning. So we started the week with a sign-in experience using components. We dove into creating a navigation bar using component states. Then yesterday we designed a social feed using anchor links. And today we're going to be talking about search and discovery focused on plugins. And I love plugins in Adobe XD. They just open up so much extra in the application. And to that extent, let's hop over to Adobe XD. Here's the template, and as I've explained in previous challenges, if you are either just catching up or possibly you're just starting, maybe later in the challenge, you can always grab the template file for any of the days and it will catch you up from the previous day, which is really nice. Of course, if you are participating from day number 1, definitely grab that file and continue from there. All right, so here we go. We have our signing experience that we touched on the first day. And now we have our social feed with our navigation bar at the bottom. So there's a few things we're going to be adding to this experience. We are going to be adding stories We all love stories, right? And time permitting, we're going to be adding a search functionality within this application, right? Yeah, Damien, I agree. Go sleep, you'll be way more productive. I'm a big supporter of sleep. Getting that 6 to 8 hours of sleep is going to help you tremendously. So, you can always rewatch these videos later on. Go sleep, get a nice, rest, and come back strong the next day. All right, so to do this, what we're going to do, I'm actually going to make a little bit of room. I'm going to grab some of these elements and move them down because we need room for those lovely stories at the top. And Usman is saying, back to Tinder. Yeah, maybe one day we'll create a Tinder-style application in XD, but not today. All right, so up here we want a few different things. We want, the ability to see our own story, and we also want the ability to see others' story. So I'm going to grab not my rectangle today. We're going to start with the ellipse tool. I know, all of your minds are blown. Usually it's all about the rectangle. I'm going to draw one out right about here, holding down my shift key to constrain this to a perfect circle. I'm going to leave it right about here. I may need some more room, but you know what? For now, we'll just leave it. We actually want two elements to this. We want a profile picture, and we also want a border. Because if you're familiar with Instagram, for example, there's two borders. One to indicate that there's a new story that you haven't seen yet, and another one to indicate that you have seen it. So it's kind of grayed out. So what we're going to do is, it does kind of look like the Tinder logo, doesn't it? Well, it'll do. It's a simple fire icon. I thought it was kind of fun. So we've got this we're going to be using for the profile, just like that, bam. And we actually want two. Now, of course, you can go ahead and add a border just like this and use that. However, you'll notice in a few moments, because we're going to be using a repeat grid, it's not as easy to override. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this, Command or Control D, boop, just like that. And now I can choose a border. Let's just go for, we can actually use a fill if we wanted to. And I can push this behind it and make it a little bit larger. And now we have a nice little border, right? And maybe on our profile picture, just to separate the profile picture from the border in the background, I'll add a border here, but just a white one. And this one will not change. It's going to be pretty consistent. And like I talked about yesterday, it's always a good idea to preview your prototype just to see how things are looking. Now in this case, I may want to just grab these and move them down a little bit. And I'll probably have to move these down as well, but we'll see how things are looking. Now next, down below, we might want to put our name. So in this case, that is my name. I'm going to just use Howard. I'm going to make this quite a bit smaller. Somewhere around, 14 pixels looks pretty good. We may adjust that later. And we probably don't want bold. Let's go drop it down to, you know what? I also want to change the typeface to Sophia Pro. Medium might look okay. And let's see what this looks like. So I'll make sure it's centered. Right? Again, preview this. That looks okay, but of course it's pushing a little bit too much on the feed at the bottom. So I'm going to just select some of these elements and just shift them down a touch, just so we have a nice amount of breathing room up at the top. All right, so we've got our first story created essentially, right? But of course we want additional ones, and then we want some content in those story previews. So what we're going to do, we're going to select all these elements, and we need to turn this into a repeat grid. So right at the top, we've got a repeat grid button right up here, and by law, you have to say boop. There we go. And we've got the boop animation down at the bottom that way. You've got to have that too. So we've got that done, and now we're going to pull out additional stories across our artboard, and we may even want to space them out a touch just to indicate that I do love Sophia Pro. It's a great typeface, just to indicate that additional stories can be swiped over to access. So if we take a look at this, that's looking pretty good. Kind of happy with that. Now, of course, all of this is looking very the same and uniform. So there's a few things we want to do. Now, if you're familiar, again, with Instagram, the border on your story is typically different than the border on other stories, right? So here's how we're going to change it. If you were to simply grab this repeat grid, which I'm going to name, let's go ahead and name this stories. I can't spell at all, stories. If you were to simply go into the repeat grid, grab an item, and then change the color, watch what happens. It changes it across all of them. No pop-ins. I used pop-ins a lot previously. Now I'm switching it up. Maybe next week it'll be something different. So if you were to change it in a repeat grid, it changes across all the different cells, and that is by design. That's what repeat grids are supposed to do. However, there's a trick. Let's go into our first item right here. And we've got our border selected, which I'm just going to actually name border and name this profile, right? Just to keep things up to date. And what we're going to do is we're going to turn this into a component. So I can right click on this and make component. And what that will allow me to do, that will allow me now to dive into my repeat grid cells and make changes. So actually I have in my assets panel this pink that we've been using. So I can go ahead and click on that, and it's going to automatically apply it to this one. And it did not affect any other ones. Now I can just go through and change all the borders, whoops, on these other ones. And maybe this one down here, maybe we've already seen it before, right? So I can maybe just change this to a nice gray color. Now going back to what I was talking about earlier, remember when I told you that you could simply add a border to the profile picture, but there would be some complications? The complications, if you were to turn that into a component, it would not allow you to drag images into those specific elements. So if I were to go to Finder, for example, I've got these great images here. I just grab a few of them, pop them into a repeat grid. We've done this before, right? If it was a component, it would not allow you to do that because the concept of components is so you can override specific elements. So it doesn't really act like a repeat grid. However, we're not going to be doing this today. We're going to be exploring plugins to add in content. So here's what we're going to do. We've got our repeat grid looking pretty good for this stories section. We're going to hop down here to the bottom of our interface. We're going to go to the plugins panel. And we're not going to be using the icons for design plugin just yet, but we are going to be using the UI Faces plugin, one of my favorite plugins. And if you don't have that installed, hit the plus button at the top and you're going to get this plugin manager and you will be able to browse for plugins. And actually UI Faces is the first essential plugin. It's that good. And they're actually working on a pretty massive update with some really cool illustrations that you can use for profile pictures. And fun fact, there's going to be a Howard illustration. I was like so stoked when I heard that. I'm so excited for this. I don't know when that update's coming, but it's coming at some point. So what we want to do is make sure to select the element that we want to put profile pictures in. In this case, it's this element here, right? Which is not a component, very important, but it's inside of the repeat grid. Go into the UI Faces plugin, and you have a bunch of different sources that you can pull from Unsplash, which is great royalty-free photos, IMDb, faces.design. I haven't used all of these, but some of them are great. And as Cornell just mentioned, this person does not exist. If you want to get freaked out, go to thispersondoesnotexist.com. It's an algorithm by NVIDIA, and it generates completely computer-generated images of people that do not exist. Very strange stuff, but let's go ahead and select that. We're going to select this person does not exist. If you want to dial down on this, you can choose genders, emotions, hair colors, but you know what? Let's just go crazy with this, and I'm going to go ahead and press apply. And essentially it's grabbing images from this source, whether it's, again, Unsplash, this person does not exist, and it's popping them in there. And like I mentioned, these people are not real people. So if you're worried about copyright and everything like that, don't worry about it with this specific source. These are not real people. If someone tries to tell you that this is them, it's not. It's all computer generated. Crazy stuff, right? So we've got our stories looking pretty good, and of course you can press apply and run it as many times as you want, but I'm pretty happy with that. And if we take a look at what things are looking like, fancy, right? Now, that takes care of the photos, but what about names? Now, of course, just like images, we could hop over to Finder if you have a plain text document. Now, these are much longer images, so it's not going to really look very good in this case, but you can You can drop plain text documents. Again, very long names wasn't set up for this, but you can do that, right? However, you can also use a plugin. So something like the repeater plugin, or repeater, don't know what it's called, but I'm going to go ahead and click on that and generate. You have to select the entire repeat grid. There we go. And you have a bunch of different things you can use. So that's a good plugin to use. You can also use the content generator plugin, right? So there's that one there. And there's also, where was that other plugin that I was using earlier? Content generator. So this one allows you to do names, for example. And then, which is the other one? I was using another one just before this stream started. Faker. Here we go. And we can go ahead and choose name just down here. And we can go, let's actually delete just like that. And we can go first name and generate, right? Oh, it generated, let's see, first name. Am I running into a bug? I might be running into a bug. Fun times. All right, let's just go ahead and I'm gonna pick some names from here. I'll just say, let's say, who do we have in here? Edith. Edith. Perfect. And who else do we have? We have Julia. And who else do we have? We have Pearl. Pearl. And we need one more name. Perfect. All right. So there we go. Fancy. All right. Let's go ahead and move on. One more thing. Let's how much time do we have? We have about 10 minutes. So we're going to work on search experience. Hey, Telima. Apologies if I mispronounced the name. First time joining live. Excited to be here. I'm excited that you're here. So for this one, we're going to be working on a search experience. I'm actually going to delete all this information. We don't need any of this. I'm going to make sure this is, move that up. And I can select our navigation bar that we have created, and choose the search state, just like that. Perfect. All right. Now at the top of this search experience, we may want some sort of a search bar. So I'm going to grab my rectangle. I'm going to drag one out across here. And maybe for this, I'm going to round out the corners just a little bit, just like that, right? And maybe I'll sample this gray up top, and I'll add a little bit of a border just to separate it from that white background. Now, inside of here, we may want to include a search icon. And for that, we are going to hop into the Icons for Design plugin, which you have seen me use before. And I'm going to just type out search. And we've got some great icons here. Let's say the feather icon is one of my favorites. Got a little shorter handle, which kind of gives it a little bit of style. And it is border based, so you can change the border within your property inspector very easily. So I'll put this about 16 pixels from the left. Maybe I'll drop the border to about 1 and then type out the word search. I'll left justify it. We'll change this to regular and position it right about here. Perfect. That looks pretty good. Now, of course, we need some results for our search experience. And for that, we can make our lives a little bit easier. We can actually dive into this repeat grid. Select, let's say, this element here, which is going to be used for the profile picture, the name, and some of this text, right? And we'll just hop over here and paste it. Just to make our lives a little bit easier. If we have elements, we might as well use it. So we're going to do that, but this, in this case, is going to be username. And I can double click on the handle at the bottom of this point area text and just, squeeze it in really nicely. So we've got our username, we've got our full name, we have our username, which I'm going to bump up in size just a little bit to about 16. This I might bump up a little bit more to 18. And then I might just make sure this is nice and centered, right? Perfect. All right, so that's looking pretty good. And just like we did before, we may want to turn this into a repeat grid. So I'm going to select both of these elements one more time, hit the repeat grid button, boop, and then drag them out down the artboard. We'll have a nice amount of search results going down, right? There we go. I also want to make sure that the name, at least the full name, is also right over here, area text. And this will allow me, if some of the names are a little bit longer, it'll allow the repeat grid to do its thing and everything will look great. So, of course, again, we need some content. One more time, let's show how typically we would do it. So we would go to Finder, right? We've got some images here. I would just grab a bunch of them, drag them directly into any of the elements within a repeat grid, and it would automatically load those images in, and you can double click and you can make changes, right? The same works for names. I can grab this plain text document, drag it in there, and now we have names. But of course, we definitely want to use components for this. So in that case, we are going to dive in here, right? Hop into our plugins panel, go back to, let's go for UI faces. This time let's go for Unsplash, for example, and we're gonna press apply. It's gonna grab a bunch of images from Unsplash, load them into all the boxes, all the similar boxes across all the cells. And those are some great looking photos, right? And of course you can also change the image size. You can have original if you want to. Those will be a lot larger, so the file size of your actual XD document will be substantially larger. So be careful with that. But if you do need super high quality, right, you can definitely use original. So that looks pretty good. And now let's go ahead and try some plugins. So we've got here, let's go ahead, we've got a rectangle, we already have images in there, but let's say for John Doe, that might be the full name. So in this case, we can go into the repeater plugin, repeater, again, I don't know. And it has a lot of different options. So we can go down to name, for example, and we can choose either first name, full name, last name, whatever it might be. Let's go ahead and choose first and last name. I'm gonna press apply. And you're going to notice it automatically added those in there. And what's nice about repeat grids is if you wanted to change the styling of any of these, move some over, make sure everything's lined up, or maybe make this a little bit less bold, semi-bold, whatever it might be, you can very easily do that. Now let's go back into the repeater plugin. And one more time, I'm going to select the username text that we have the placeholder for. And under the internet, let me zoom in here. Under the internet section, this one right here, this will allow us to generate usernames. Now, the only downside to this is if you are displaying usernames along with full names, they're probably not going to relate completely, but at least it'll give you something, right? I'm going to press apply, and we've got some interesting looking usernames going down our artboard, right? And of course, you can continue dragging this down. It's going to repeat some of that information, but you can always go into the plugin and make changes if you want to. So, how are things looking? Hopefully, many of you are following along. I'm going to make some quick tweaks. And of course, if you wanted to, right, you can create two different states for this particular experience, right? So what we can do is we can select all this information, including the repeat grid, all of this. We can turn all of this into a component. So Command and Control K, just like that. And it's going to add this to your assets panel. So I can type out search, for example, right? Now, inside of the properties inspector, we can add a new state. But first, let's go ahead and modify the initial state. So maybe, for example, the initial state only will display the search bar and not all the results. So in that case, I'm just going to dive into the component, select that repeat grid, which I'm going to name results. I'm very bad at naming my layers, and I'm going to hide it. And maybe just to make it a little bit fancier, I'll collapse it just like this, right? We're going to get fancy. I'm going to hide this one just like that. Now, we can go ahead and create a new state in our properties inspector. I'm going to name this results. And now that that's created and selected, all we have to do is modify this. So I'm going to go ahead and show the results, repeat grid, and expand it just like that. Perfect. So we have our two states. We have our default state, which is just the search bar, and we have our results. So from the default state, we're going to hop into prototype mode, and we actually explored this a little bit on Wednesday when we explored component states. We are going to click on the blue handle to the right, just like that. We're going to choose tap for the trigger, because that's what we want a user to do. We want someone to tap on the search bar. We're going to choose our destination, which is our new results state. And we'll choose auto animate so that, the collapsed repeat grid animates really nicely as it comes down. We'll do ease in and out, and let's say 0.6 seconds, right? And now, whoop, there we go. So it unhit itself and it uncollapsed, which is really nice. Now, of course, if you wanted to, you can hook up from the home screen to the search screen. So from within prototype mode, we already have this hooked up, right? We have the search interaction, search icon hooked up to the search state. But now we want to go to a different artboard. So all we're gonna have to do in this case is just drag, whoops, I missed it. We just drag this to the search artboard just like that. We can do auto animate if we want to. Press play and then, whoop, right? We can go back to home. And of course, home isn't linked from these additional ones. So I can just go in here, slide this back over, right? And now it also has that sound that we added yesterday. Fancy. Cornell's asking, will there be new challenges during the weekend? There will not be. We do have the weekend off, so there will be no challenges, but there will be one on Monday again. And after this round of challenges are over, there'll be another round right after that, hosted by someone else. So that will just about do it. One more time. We've got our home, search, expand, and done. All right? Sounds good. So big thank you to everyone joining me today on this magical Friday. Richard, Anna, Cornell, Claudio, Christina, Jan Eric, Akin, Damien, Sam, everyone else, Pearl. Thank you, everyone. And I'll be back on Monday. I don't think we have anything after this today, do we? Oh, we do. I believe Flynn and Ichiban are coming up at 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock Pacific time. So stick around for them. And that will just about do it for me for today. Thank you, everyone, and I will see you all again on Monday.